Well, Gray's taking the spotlight in financial markets this week. For insight on what to expect, we are joined in studio by Eran Peleg of investment firm Clarity Capital. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, what is the likelihood now of a Greek exit from the Eurozone?
So we still believe it's fairly low. One has to understand, Greece already missed a payment to the IMF 2 days ago on the 30th of June, and it's actually likely that they might default. That payment miss does not constitute a formal default because it's private debt to a public institution. But the chances of a default have increased. We still have the referendum, which is coming up on Sunday, July 5th, but there is no direct link between those issues and the question of what will be the outcome on Sunday, or at least not a formal link between that and between a Greek exit from the Eurozone, which is a much more complicated process.
Right. Well, what would that impact have on the world economy?
So fairly modest. You have to understand Greece's share of global GDP is 0.3%. That's tiny, minimal. Most advanced economies' exports to Greece are very minimal. So at least from an economic perspective, the impact would be very low.
But wouldn't Europe feel a big shock from that?
So when it comes to the financial aspect or the financial fallout, potential fallout from a Greek situation, there are definitely risks. But a lot of things have changed over the last couple of years. So since 2011, say, when the whole Greek crisis broke out, a lot of the Greek debt has moved from the private sector to the public sector. Most of the Greek debt today is held by the IMF, by the ECB, by the European Commission. Therefore, these are public institutions that are much better positioned to. If we do see a significant loss on Greek debt, they're much better positioned to deal with those losses than if that debt was sitting with, say, commercial banks or with private investors. In addition to that, today the ECB is much better positioned to deal with any fallout, financial fallout from the situation. They have many more tools that they didn't have in place back in 2011. There's the OMT program. There's the quantitative easing program. Say, for example, already a couple months ago, they announced that they would be buying 1 trillion euros of sovereign debt in Europe over what remains now is 16 months. They can come out tomorrow morning if they need to and say, we're going to double this program to 2 trillion euros. And what they'll be doing is they'll be buying the sovereign debt of Italy and Portugal and so forth, and with that, stabilizing the situation. So because the concentration of risk is much more, the concentration is much more with the public institutions, and B, because the ECB has many more tools, therefore we think that the financial fallout probably can be contained.
Interesting. So this is just more on the public side rather than the private. But what about this upcoming referendum? What should market watchers really be looking for here?
Look, it does make a big difference whether the outcome is a yes or no at the end of the day. I think that if we get a no vote, then we're back to the negotiating table, because at the moment, theoretically, we've still had negotiations kind of going on the last couple of days, or at least there was some attempt to negotiate over the last couple of days. But Merkel has come out, I think, whether it was yesterday or the day before, and said, let's wait. Let's talk after the referendum. So now we're waiting for the outcome. If the public says no, like what the Greek government is campaigning for, back to negotiations. If they say yes, then I think that opens up a lot of different scenarios, because then the Greek government would probably need to resign. And they've already said now today, Varoufakis, the finance minister, said today, I will resign. That was clear. He didn't have to say that, actually. It's quite clear that they cannot continue to serve as the government if they lose that vote. But then there are many other political scenarios that are opening up to us, and we'll have to assess them as they come along, I guess.
Indeed, it seems certainly like a wild card right now. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight here very much.
Thank you.